I had to come back and give a new Cosby update. Firstly, because every time Bill Cosby hits the news cycles again, people sometimes come back around and ask questions looking for my take on what's happening now since I had a few viral videos on the topic. And it looks like it's time to address this and set many things straight again. I'm seeing some other people starting to push this issue, which is good. And it was only a matter of time. However, for me, it's not purposeful or my calling to preach to the choir, so to speak. This needs to go out to everyone and in the most palatable way. And there are societal lessons for all in this narrative. Because I've said this years ago. And now the jig is up, and this has finally got to end. With each day, more and more people are learning exactly what happened. And for those still clinging on to this, I'm going to cover this from top to bottom so that there is no more room for this foolishness to flourish among people who consider themselves rational. The main thing that needs to be addressed. The ever dishonest media networks that have a very conspicuous agenda against Bill Cosby are exposing themselves, still lying, omitting information, and spinning the narrative all trial long. And that is what always pulls me back in. Personally, this situation is very useful and important for me as a truth channel, because when you see what they're doing with the Cosby trial, it will open your eyes to American media and how it's now operating these days in general. And so I'm more than happy to show you exactly what they're doing, that you can see for yourself, plain as day. It's my pleasure. Let's dive in. The Cosby situation, in which the media clearly has an angle, is one of the many cases that exposes the mainstream media's tricks and schemes. One of the main ways some media outlets lie to us these days is not necessarily by lying per se, but by omission of information. And this is what they do on a regular basis. They're telling you things that are true, but it's how they tell it to you and what they leave out that tells the real story. They've been lying about this for a long time. All the pundits were rambling about Bill Cosby. And without any proof or evidence or thinking anything was weird, people just believed it. Let's go in and listen to what the media is telling you about the Bill Cosby retrial.
The Bill Cosby retrial is now underway. After a jury failed to reach a verdict in his June 2017 trial, Cosby returns to a suburban Philadelphia courthouse to again face Andrea Constand. After the first trial resulted in a deadlocked jury, Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin Steele vowed to bring the case back to court. He's returning for this retrial.
Just because, a verdict was not reached in one case doesn't mean it won't be reached next time around.
Steele scored a major victory in the pretrial phase.
Let me stop the video right here. Look how they calmly and smoothly begin to talk about the retrial as if everything is normal. But notice nowhere do they ever tell you why there even is a retrial. They purposefully keep people ignorant of legal protocol. What happened the last time? Why are we here? Let's go back. I said it in many of the other videos. You see, this case was dropped the very first time Andrea Constand tried to peddle this. The reason why it was dropped wasn't because the former Montgomery County DA was a Cosby fan, because he's not. He would have nailed Cosby too if he could. But he was the DA with a strong legal background, and he knew it wasn't a winnable case back then. Why? Because Andrea Constand is suspect, with numerous inconsistencies in her allegations, and with many questionable and suspicious actions now on record that include, calling Cosby on Valentine's Day after the alleged incident, calling him repeatedly before and after the incident, and changing her story a few times, and secretly recording his phone conversations. And she never went to the police, because had she done that, they would have nailed her on all those things. So with all these things considered, Castor knew then that this case could not move forward. In PhillyMag.com, October 26, 2015, an article by Victor Fiorillo reports that Castor said Constant had enhanced her story when she sued Bill Cosby. For fear of how she would look in public, Constant demanded a public apology from Castor, but Castor, who was not lying, refused. Castor also stated that Constant exaggerated her claims in a lawsuit and therefore would not be believed. The case is really done right there, but whatever, let me continue. Castor also told the Philadelphia Inquirer that Constant and her lawyers were engaging in quite despicable behavior in an effort to influence the November 3rd election. So another subplot that the media never told you is that there is a connection and strong ties with Constant and the new DA, Kevin Steele, and that she was perhaps helpful in getting him elected. Oh, we'll get back to that perhaps in another video. So Constant was slick. Instead of going to the police, she was going to law offices, studying what to do. And she went seeking out lawyers, almost as though, I don't know, like she was after something the whole time. So no, it's not like Castor wanted to help Cosby. He just simply knew this case was bad and not strong enough to be pushed through. But not to worry. Someone else's plans would soon interlock with hers. A person who might have been secretly helping under the table entered the new DA, Kevin Steele. For some reason, Steele ran for DA almost completely on the promise to get Cosby. I'll let that sink in and then I'll continue. At any rate, that was unconstitutional. Unfortunately, many people didn't understand that because most are disconnected and brainwashed by the media. So it didn't even raise an eyebrow. And he won. He then became a man obsessed with getting Cosby. So right here should already let you know it's really not about this thing being true or not. This quickly continued to snowball more and more into a revolting agenda that many people, including the media, are involved with and are committed to for all the wrong, covert reasons, not justice. So Steele revived and pushed this dead case that was dropped by Castor, sealed and settled with a gag in place, back into court. This should have been stopped as unlawful, but at this point the media had created such a Cosby witch hunt that no one batted an eye, and we all just let it run. And everyone in key positions were working together to circumvent the Constitution because getting Cosby by any means necessary was suddenly okay. That's why another accomplice, Judge Rebreno, unsealed Cosby's documents. You don't deny a citizen's rights to placate the media and then hand them over the documents. And you don't unseal things that were sealed. Anyway, now because of the media and all these people working in concert, many of our rights and protections have been relaxed. So they all help each other and push this through, and they crash land. Like I already told you way back. This same case that should never have been in court in the first place falls flat in a mistrial in June of 2017. Why? Take a guess. Because there was reasonable doubt, and the jury was split. And the only reason it was split is because some of the jurors don't get it and they're ruling emotionally. We're talking about someone's life, and you cannot rule in favor of someone who has inconsistent testimony or when there's reasonable doubt present. There's plenty. With all that we know, there's no way that an entire jury will call this man guilty. Again, Castor already knew that before wasting any taxpayer money, and it's not slandering. Constant has numerous fabrications, exaggerations, and inconsistent statements on record. There is no way to move forward. If this was really about justice and the law, everyone involved would know that you got to let this go. Regardless, the maniacal Captain Ahab of this debacle, Kevin Steele, refused and decided to throw even more taxpayer money into the pot for his personal agenda to pursue the now 80-year-old Bill Cosby, who, by the way, just lost his daughter.
So, Richard, would he stand a better chance to retry?
No, not necessarily, Fred. He never looked at the case like a true district attorney. This was a politically motivated prosecution. The prior district attorney made a determination it could not get a conviction, and therefore they did not allow Ms. Constant to be the witness in criminal charges against Mr. Cosby, although that DA encouraged her to bring a civil litigation where the burden of proof is less. This district attorney ran on a platform of indicting and prosecuting Mr. Cosby. He won maybe on that provision alone, and so he brings this litigation on facts and circumstances that took place 14 years ago, where people have to testify to what happened then and after. There's a lot of contradiction in testimony and statements that were given, and the problem with the retrial here, Fred, is the problem they had during this trial. Miss Constant had a relationship with Mr. Cosby. She had some 72 phone calls with him before the event took place, 3 meetings in his house before the event took place. Then subsequent to the alleged attack, Fred, subsequent to that, 6 months later, she reached out to Cosby to get tickets for her parents to see his show. That's not consistent with someone who was sexually assaulted. No forensic evidence to prove quaaludes, nothing at all. This is a very difficult case to ever obtain a 12-0 conviction. Not going to happen next time.
So, and in fact, on the case, Avery, of those, phone calls.
And so Steele brought this dead case back to life yet again. This is amazing. To any law students out there, you need to follow this case. This is a kangaroo court of pure madness, warped and shockingly unconstitutional, but amazing nonetheless. And so, this unconstitutional trial that should have never happened to begin with, brought back again after 2 failed attempts, is what we're watching now. The media will never tell you any of that. And now that all of you watching are now properly brought up to speed, let's continue.
The prosecution will be allowed to call 5 additional accusers to testify. And lastly, Judge Stephen O'Neill is back to preside over the case.
Ooh, let's stop it right here. What's being glossed over is another accomplice, Judge Stephen T. O'Neill. Simply put, O'Neill should not be trying this case. Judge O'Neill is married to a sexual assault counselor at the University of Pennsylvania, Deborah O'Neill, who already voiced support for believing the women on multiple occasions. And I so kid you not. After several questionable rulings by O'Neill, like allowing other accusers who have no proof and nothing to do with Constant's case to come to the courtroom and cry, whimper, and tell their stories to influence the jury, Cosby's defense rightfully filed a motion for the judge to recuse himself. Judges are not supposed to have a personal stake in or be emotionally compromised in the cases they preside over. And in the perspective of the defense, his suspicious decisions appeared to be trying to assist Constant. His response to the motion was basically, nah, I'm good, I'll be fair. And Judge O'Neill refused to recuse himself. And the motion was denied. Truthfully, the revelation of who his wife was and what she did for a living right there should have been it for O'Neill. But you see, everyone is just doing whatever the hell they want to, as long as it's bad for Cosby. This is not justice. This is a trial that should not even be happening, and they're tilting the table and stacking the deck. This trial is a joke, full of clowns and schemers and opportunists, manipulating constitutional rights like a Rubik's Cube. Again, that's why it's no surprise Judge O'Neill allowed a lot of strange things. Like in the last trial, he blocked a witness ready to testify that Constant told her she could win money for her schooling and her business if she went through with something involving a celebrity. The good Judge O'Neill found that not relevant and hearsay, but he decided to allow 5 additional accusers with nothing to do with this case to testify against Cosby, to provide unsubstantiated hearsay. Yep.
Prosecution wanted to call what we call 13 prior bad act witnesses, in other words, other accusers. And the court only allowed him to call one. That's my client, Kelly Johnson, who was very brave in testifying. Now that there's going to be a new trial, I'm hoping that the court will allow more prior bad act witnesses, more accusers, to be able to testify.
All right, so Richard, you were shaking your head before listening to Ms. Allred. Now what? What do you think?
I can't listen to her. It's like chalk on a blackboard. I just cannot listen to her, Fred.
Give her a break. Give her a break.
The prior bad acts, it's usually in the federal system, 404B, prior bad acts. When you seek to put that amount of information and evidence on, your case is paper thin. The judge rightfully precluded it because there have been no convictions in those cases, Fred.
Right.
So it becomes
Right.
a sideshow where the defense tries each and every one of them to try to undermine them and their credibility. And that's what happened to Ms. I can't even say her name's witness who testified in this Cosby case. She got obliterated on cross-examination. Her testimony was negative, maybe hurt the prosecution's case. So that's not going to happen.
Wow.
And then I believe in any retrial, Fred, unlike John Gotti or Phil Spector, they are going to get another either hung jury or acquittal on a retrial.
We'll see.
All right, we shall see. Avery and Richard, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
So let me just sum this up for all the clear-minded people out there looking for a genuine update about what is going on with this case that the media probably won't tell you. Constance should never win this case because there's enough information on record for a full not guilty verdict. But there is so much nonsense, conspiracy, schemes, politics, media brainwashing, assistance from feminist groups who never bother to look at any evidence, simultaneously convincing themselves that they are doing good work, publicity stunts by hired stooges, and so much chaos that it's really hard to say what will happen. I say, in no exaggeration, we are looking at one of the worst kangaroo courts I have ever witnessed in my lifetime. Now that I gave you the facts, let me give you my commentary. In conversations, people have asked why this case is so important to me. I talk about a lot of things from sports to politics to spirituality, but this is very connected to what I do in terms of standing your ground and telling the truth against all odds. With that said, we're living in a time in which there is so much going on in the world, and we are being lied to, manipulated, and emotionally compromised by so many things. Like this situation and so many other things, we are in a day and age in which people cannot bring themselves to understand that this was always off and it just doesn't check out. And that is troubling to me. This case represents another example of the media's power over the minds of the people despite facts, evidence, and reality. So many people are under the spell of many psychological mechanisms. One of them is proof by assertion. Unbeknownst to most people, the media has been working lock and step with intelligence agencies for a long time, and they employ these strategies all the time. People are just not aware of it. Through proof by assertion tactics, people make the psychological agreement that something is true, even though it may not be true, simply because it's been repeated over and over by your news personalities, celebrities, comedians making jokes, and so on and so on and so on. You are pulled and locked into the matrix and group thinking. And so with this case, conditioned by proof by assertion, everyone has made the agreement that Bill Cosby is a serial rapist. Because, I don't know, of course we all know that. Well, except there was never any evidence in existence to call that true. That's just for those who really want to look at this thing case by case. In fact, anytime you focus on one accuser, like Constance, you discover something weird or some kind of blatant deception. But still, never deviate from the programmed belief that Cosby is a serial rapist. And that is because we are a society under mind control without even realizing it. We think with the hive. We all sat back and allowed the courts to bend and break the rules if it meant we might get him. We sat back and let colleges rescind his degrees on no grounds, no evidence, no convictions. Because we all know he did it, right? Well, did what? And to who? Well, he drugged and raped the women. Oh, okay, well, which ones? What happened? For just one case, there are 6 women allowed in court right now, so let's look at half. Is it Andrea Constant? Already went through this. We already know, due to the evidence, something's not right with this. Inconsistencies all across the board. So perhaps there's a better example. So then is it Janice Dickinson? She's the most famous of the women allowed to testify. No commentary really necessary. But it's important to add that she was reported to be barely coherent by some reporters who were there, and she already admitted that she lied about her Cosby stories in her memoir. Well, let's see then, is it Shaylin Lasha? This one's pretty interesting because the media is protecting an image of her that isn't really rooted in reality. What they're hiding is that Lasha has a long criminal record and a history of false reporting. Not slander, facts. She was also convicted for prostitution. And I'm not saying a prostitute can't get raped because, of course, that would be wrong. Sure they can. But this is a case where they have to convict based on belief. And she has no proof. What she has is a history of false reports and working the night. Again, not judgment, but we're just supposed to believe that a man who had $400 million drugged her? Let me remind you, like most of them, conveniently she wasn't raped. She claimed she was just molested by Cosby. And she claims, while she was woozy, Cosby humped her leg. Now, using logic, she was a person arrested for having sex for money. And I'm not shaming her for that at all. I'm just stating a fact and making a point. She was a sex worker proven by the fact she was convicted for it. Yet she's crying and crying in court uncontrollably about allegedly being not raped, but groped and leg humped nearly 40 years ago. This is who some people in the media are calling a hero, speaking up for all women. Now that's 3, including 2 of the 5 women Judge O'Neill allowed to sway the jury. And by the way, he won't allow their histories to be admissible, just their stories. Moving along. Is it any of the women strategically assembled by Gloria Allred for the $100 million settlement she proposed? They all came in a wave together to say Cosby did something to them. But it's strange. All of them together, it's like, oh, where there's smoke, there's fire. And, well, he had to rape at least one of them and all that idiocy. But when you take them one by one and analyze who it is and what the claim is, something never seems to add up. A publication out in Philly, YC News, has been giving excellent coverage, and you should definitely check their site out. There you can see things that a lot of mainstream publications are completely hiding, and it's mind-blowing like this. Cosby's lawyer, Tom Mesereau, asked accuser Janice Baker Kinney, "Who gave you the Quaaludes?" She quickly replied, "Bill Cosby." Then he asked her again, reminding her of her previous statements that she took a pill before the party. And he asked her again, "Who gave you the Quaaludes?" She paused, put her head down, and replied, "A friend." That is it right there. And could you believe the media has not said a word about that? Cosby didn't even give her anything, but the media has you believing that he did. Then Mesereau masterfully began to expose that Kinney was getting trashed and taking drugs all on her own, voluntarily slept with Bill Cosby. Then later on, was convinced by her husband and Gloria Allred that it was rape. And so she too came back years later to join the lineup. And that's also why we have a statute of limitations that they're trying to get rid of. Times change, social norms change, and getting trashed and having sex was quite normal. trying to criminalize things with a new definition of rape 30, 40, 50 years later when a man is 80 is not reasonable. So whether it's true or not, this one is not rape and this one has imploded as well. And oh yeah, guys, out of the 6, that's 4.
And I just think that the woman has been like this over the years, and she's stuck by her man, and God bless her for that, but she is delusional. And denial.
The thing is, it's all like the premise that 40 plus, the ones we know, consented and now have decided to say they didn't consent is such a far-fetched premise. Why would anybody do that?
Right.
And why would 40 people do that?
So many women. You know, what I see also in addition to delusion is that a lot of times when you've believed something about somebody for such a long time and you realize it's not true, it's not just that you're disappointed in the other person, you're disappointed in yourself for believing a lie for so long. And it's easier to deny the truth and protect your own,
you know, your own sense of self. You know, there's this word, I'm sorry, I always use big words, but this word cognitive dissonance. It's like, I know the truth, but I can't accept the truth. So I'm gonna keep believing a lie to protect my own sense of self-worth.
Did Cosby really drug and rape all those people? Again, like I said, when isolated, no one's claim is credible on its own. Interesting. There's a paradigm shift on its way that I already know many people are not ready for. For example, there are people who are listening to this right now and know what I'm saying is the truth. And if they don't want to accept it as the truth, they at least know it's making a lot of sense. But still, they're gathering their psychological defenses against it. Because some people are committed to the lie and to the belief set for a variety of personal reasons. You could take this same paradigm to the realm of religion, to politics, or wherever you like. It's the same thing. It's a trapped mind that does not want to get out. Who are these people trapped in this narrative? Well, many of these people are victims of assault themselves, who are emotionally caught in this narrative. And so it's difficult to see this for what it really is. When challenged with facts, some will quote statistics and generalize and talk about abused women everywhere. And they cannot separate it or talk about things case by case with the understanding that this is an unproven legal matter. You can't just mindlessly believe everyone and anyone making a rape claim and then just going to bat for them. For many, there's an inability to accept information or let this go. Regardless of the situation, when we are emotionally caught into something, it's hard to be rational because we identify with the accuser as ourselves trying to be believed. This is related to something called the psychology of association that I'm going to address in another video. That's why a liar or con artist in this realm is extremely dangerous and effective. But for most, however, it's just people who have been conditioned by the media for so long that they made the agreement that Cosby is guilty. And that's just all there is to it. It has nothing to do with thinking or looking at anything. It's groupthink, and it's just agreed. It's a known thing. And the more evidence that piles on that something might not be right here, it just quickly gets dismissed and shut out because it goes against the agreement. That's why we don't really get a good education or taught how to think. Thinking is not really what they have in mind for you. So people live their lives completely unaware of these types of psychological strategies that are employed without most people knowing on a daily basis. We are all responsible for what we choose to believe, who we decide to trust, and what we throw our energy into. The things you do have an impact, and it could be helping the world and raising vibrations, or it could be lowering vibrations. And either way, it's going to come back to you. We have to train ourselves to let go, to stop trying to control narratives around us, to fit what we want to believe. We have to unlearn how we've been programmed and retrain ourselves how to really process information, keeping unsubstantiated fiction out and letting facts in. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and part of the reasons why I'm attracted to this case, because it's all in there. There are many lessons that need to be learned for many people in this freak show. No one is telling anyone to stop advocating for women, and dealing with the scourge of pervasive sexual abuse is a good thing. But if you're still throwing in your support for this situation because you're listening to these people on TV, or you're listening to misguided movements and groups sweeping you away, or just simply not looking at any information, you might be in a bad way, in the matrix, on the wrong side of history. And it's time to get off this train and reevaluate many things. In short, wake up.